You look at the leadership of the young, brave Captain Ibrahim Traore.
Already seeing Russia, Rosatom is talking about bringing nuclear reactors into Burkina Faso, but I hope one day it's nuclear bombs.
Respect, lovely family, you are welcome back to the channel. Guys, at the just ended Pan-Africa Congress in South Africa, an American activist named Jackson Hinkle set fire at the meeting by making reference to the leaders of the Sahel, starting from Ibrahim Traore all the way to the leader of Niger, Tani. Guys, his speech will blow your mind, not because of the weight of the speech, but because he's a white man, an American for that matter. He said things that Africans fail to see and Africans are afraid to say, calling African leaders to take the path of the Sahel, especially what Ibrahim Traore is doing or championing in the Sahel. And I'm going to play you the video. It is mind-blowing. He gave a speech before the meeting started, let me say at the forum. He made amazing remarks about Ibrahim Traore and the Sahel. And when the meeting finally started, he still brought the fire on the faces of these African leaders, calling them to follow the path of Ibrahim Traore. This young American activist actually used Ibrahim Traore as the curriculum to lecture Pan-Africans. Not surprising, some African leaders find his speech very offensive, but he spoke the truth. Jack is such a genuine person who understands the value and principle of fairness, equality, and true democracy. Jackson Hinkle is an activist who opposes Western system and pose on other nations to cripple their economy. He is opposed to Western sponsored war, and he is also opposed to Western dominance in Africa. He is practically in opposition to imperialism. Although he's a white man and an American for that matter, he supports the struggle of true African freedom, and his government doesn't like him because of his stand on foreign relations. Just like you as an activist in your country fighting your system, he also is an activist in America fighting the Western system. And he also mentioned the reason why Africa needs nuclear bombs and why Africa should not rejoice at Trump winning the US election. So let's listen to part of his speech before the meeting started. And after the video, I'm going to show you some of his mind-blowing tweets about the Sahel.
My name is Jackson Hinkle. What I first have to say is how inspired I am to be in this country, South Africa. You know, as someone, my family sailed to America on the Mayflower. They participated in the American Revolution. They fought in World War II alongside Red Army soldiers. They fought in the US Civil War against the British imperialists who were trying to break our country apart. I can think of not many other places I'd rather be or visit at some point in my life than South Africa, which has such a deep revolutionary history, especially today. In the last panel, I was extremely inspired by those who were talking about land. Land is the primary contradiction, and it is what defines our struggles. And it's the reason why I think Africa has so many of the problems that they have today, that you are all facing today. Because Africa, as we all know, is the richest continent on the face of the earth. But one thing that those in America and those in the United Kingdom and those in Europe seem not to understand is that Africa is not for the United Kingdom. Africa's land is not for the Dutch. Africa's land is not for anyone but Africans. That's right. And you look at the leadership of the young, brave Captain Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso. He understands that Africa is for Africans. You look at Chiani, Mr. Chiani in Niger. He understands that Africa is for Africans. You look at Mali or Chad, those who are fighting against the US-backed effort in ECOWAS to lead a Nigerian-led invasion into Niger. Those people all understand that Africa is for Africans. And it scares the, sorry for my vulgarity, it scares the shit out of the United States. The United States was not too scared about the revolutionaries in South Africa when the struggle against apartheid changed from a struggle for true sovereignty, for African land, into a struggle against discrimination. When the struggle in the time of apartheid changed to a struggle against discrimination rather than a struggle for land and true sovereignty, the Americans were okay with the idea of the apartheid system unraveling and falling apart. But the reason why the Americans are so fearful about what is happening with China and Taiwan, The reason they're so fearful about what is happening with the Sahel region and the full liberation struggle ongoing there is because these revolutionaries, these minds, these thinkers, these brave warriors understand that the fight for sovereignty doesn't have to do with what your pronouns are. The fight for sovereignty doesn't have anything to do with dividing people on lines of race or gender or sexuality or anything like that. The real struggle has to do with freeing your own land, freeing your resources. In the case of Ibrahim Traore, it's freeing his resources from the French imperialists and the US imperialists who are stealing all of their raw resources and minerals. In Niger, it's about freeing their resources, uranium, from those who are stealing it and selling it on international markets for pennies on the dollar. Africa needs to decolonize the mind before anything else is achieved. If you look at the revolutionary awakenings that took place in the Soviet Union or in China under Mao, you'd understand that China and Russia, before achieving prosperity and development, they did have this true awakening within their minds. And then China and Russia built from scratch after their great revolutions. And I truly believe that Africa will as well. So you guys got a lot of work ahead of you. I mean, it's no easy task, and it's a task that I share with you all. It's a task I share with you in the United States because I'm fighting that same beast in my own home that's creating all the economic misery for the people in my homeland. And for anyone who's too happy, I don't know if we have anyone here, if anyone's too happy about Donald Trump getting elected as President of the United States, all you have to do is look at who he's surrounding himself with in his cabinet. Donald Trump is surrounding himself with people who want to limit the ability for Africa to be able to industrialize in a sovereign manner. If you ever wonder why so many oil pipelines and gas pipelines that are built in Africa end up being bombed, or an IED is placed under it and they explode into a million pieces, it's because the United States is funding a bunch of terror groups all across Africa and targeting the critical infrastructure that would allow you all to actually achieve collective prosperity. Countries like Russia and China are doing just the opposite.
So guys, that was the speech before the real meeting started. And at the meeting, the Russian ambassador to South Africa was there. And this is where he called Africans to learn from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to defeat the imperialists. Guys, listen, fire.
if I were to draw on the history of China and the history of Iran and Korea and Russia, there's one bottom line determining factor with all of them, and that's that before their revolutions, before they commanded respect, these countries did not command respect on the global stage to the Western imperialists. That's the same problem that Africa is facing today. There is no respect that is commanded to the imperialists except for in the new confederation in Mali, and Niger, and Burkina Faso. And we've seen Russia come in and help secure the region against the US-backed threats from Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups. But ultimately, I think that Africa needs to learn from China, from Korea, from Iran, and from Russia, who first had these beautiful revolutions that commanded the respect. Then they developed their militaries, they developed nuclear bombs, they developed all these sorts of things, and then they built their economies. We're sitting here and we're talking about being in the United Nations, having a rotating seat in the United Nations Security Council. We're talking about the economic plans of Africa in the future, new currencies, African Union. All of that doesn't mean a whole lot if the West is going to come in and trample all over you. What good is a seat at the United Nations if they're not going to listen to you? The United States has to listen to China. They have to listen to Russia because China and Russia have a bunch of nuclear bombs that are already pointed at every Western city. Now, of course, I support Africa having nuclear bombs. I understand we're far away from that, and maybe it's a bit controversial to say that. I think the West needs to get very worried about the potential for Africa to assert its own sovereignty and command respect in the same way that we're seeing in the new confederation states. So I think the question of military power is extremely important, and it actually comes before the question of economic power or trade routes or currencies or any of these things. So I hope to see more bold leadership, even in the case of Niger. Victoria Nuland was too afraid to tell Nigeria to invade Niger because she understood the military power of these Sahel states with the backing of Russia. They wanted to do an ECOWAS invasion, and with the intervention of Russia and China and the military backing in the Sahel states, they understood in the United States that this was a no-go, that they couldn't do it. So I hope in my lifetime, I'll end here, that we'll see a nuclear Africa. We're already seeing Russia. Rosatom is talking about bringing nuclear reactors into Burkina Faso, but I hope one day it's nuclear bombs and true strength for Africa.
So lovely people, you can see this is an American citizen saying things that Africans are afraid to say and things that African leaders are not able to see. The unity of the Sahel, or the new confederation, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, is shaking table and is becoming a school of thought. Guys, Africa is on the move, and I believe that other nations will start joining the Sahel, whether we like it or not. It is time for revolution. If you believe that, guys, drop a comment for me. Hit the like on the video. Respect.